G'day everyone, Aussie Dollar Man here and welcome to another episode of Aussie Dollar Insights. We're going to kick it off with a review of the previous week's market action, then we're going to have a look at a forecast for the week ahead, and finally I've got some Tunnel Through the Air training for you Gann seekers out there. So we'll kick it off with the Australian dollar review. A quick disclaimer, the following video is designed to be educational in nature and shouldn't be taken as a recommendation or as trading advice. So let's look at the Aussie dollar, not the week that I had envisaged. I thought we'd have a little bit of a down movement the first day or two of the week. Obviously that kicked on as the week went by. That's not a case though of me sitting there saying, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I'm wrong. In the beginning, yes, I was looking for a long trade for the market to run up. This pattern here put me off. Pretty sure that was heading down. We had our lower tops, lower tops, lower tops, and then bang. The market did run down from there. Once you start this extended run down here, you know something's wrong. It's not ready to go up yet, and you just have to let that move play out until you hit a strong resistance point in the market or one of your time dates, or preferably both. Now, for me, the next clear resistance point on that way down, once we started heading down here, I sat back and said, okay, what's going on here? Two of the things that I had running in terms of price were these resistance cards, these ranges resistance cards, which you can read about in Gann's book, How to Make Profits in Commodities. But you can see from the low to the high, and then from the higher bottom up to the high as well, we had two resistance milestones coming together, 62.5% and 75%, both bang on 62.05. They were part of my price forecast. I had that fine-tuned a little bit more to a price of 62.02. So I just placed a buy order for a couple of days on the market at 62.02. That was triggered Friday morning here. The market actually ran down to a low of 6198. I normally use a 10-point stop when I'm trading with this methodology. Normally, it shouldn't, if it goes more than 10 points past my price forecast, in most cases, I'll know as we're getting closer, but in most cases, I'm happy to just be stopped out for a loss. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm happy enough because I think it's probably going to go further. So I take a 10-point risk. About 5 or 6 hours later, around lunchtime on Friday afternoon, I was able to move my stop loss to break even. And after that, didn't really matter what the market did. It looked pretty strong at one point on Friday night. When I woke up Saturday morning, though, the market was all the way back down here. It did put in a little bit of a rally around 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish. But you could tell breaking the first higher bottom there on the 4-hour chart, any rally there was just a little bit of overcompensation. I think that was because Trump was talking about a lot of tariffs and the market's just tanked a little bit there. There was a little bit of a rally. Surprisingly, a lot of movement at that time of day. You don't always get a lot of action on Saturday mornings in the market, but we did have a fair bit. I ended up closing the trade manually for a 16-point profit there, so a bit over 1.5 to 1 reward to risk ratio. And I'll just sit back and I'll wait now on Mondays. I don't love trading on Monday mornings because the volume is not that great late Friday night or early Monday morning in the FX markets. And I've also got a bigger picture date coming up either this week or the beginning of the following week. So I want to be ready for that when that arrives. Where does all that fit in the bigger picture? Well, on the monthly chart, we're still heading down, down, down. We weren't able to rally, so that probably suggests, given that January has now closed, we do have a little bit more downside there. On the weekly chart, we had an inside week, so we couldn't break the high, couldn't break the low. Obviously closed right near its low. It is looking quite bearish, as the daily chart did as well, closing near its low. There is potential here for a first lower top trade. We're going to talk about this in the forecast, but that's the week that we've just seen there. Quite bearish. Overall, though, we're still in this sideways formation, which, if you're missing trades in the sideways formation, it doesn't bother you at all because at the end of the day, you're not making a huge amount of money. There were runs that we've had. Looking at the forecast dates, these were all tradable runs. However, they're not massive runs that are going to make or break you as a trader. So if you miss them, you don't stress. Now, if you were watching the channel this week, I released a video, the 7 things I check before every trade. One of those things is form reading, and that's what I've just been doing, going through the charts, looking at monthly, weekly, and daily, looking at the opens and the closes, looking at the trends, lower tops, things like that, the resistance cards, all of that fits under the banner of form reading. The 2 places that I'd recommend if you want to do some form reading work, one is How to Make Profits in Commodities, Chapter 2. Again, gives you a pretty good rundown there. If you want something a lot more comprehensive, check out Safety in the Markets Active Trader Program. All right, let's move on to the Australian dollar forecast now. Earlier, or in the middle rather, of December last year, I recorded a video which was a 3-month forecast from December out to March. So I've got my monthly turning dates that I'm looking at. There's about 4 to 6 dates each month. So you can check those out in that video on the channel. The relevant forecast dates for us in this week ahead are the 3rd of February for a potential high or the 10th of February for a potential low. Now, there's a chance, and it's still on the fence, but there's a reasonable chance that I have missed an inversion here. If I have missed an inversion, you flip those over. You've got a 3 February low and a 10 February high. I'm looking for a bigger picture cycle date around the 6th to the 8th of February. That would fit in more nicely with 10th of February as a high. So I am more geared towards that. Maybe I have missed an inversion there on that smaller cycle. Doesn't bother me either way. I'll be watching the market. I'm not in the market at the moment, but I'll be watching to see what it does on Monday. And then we start looking to see, well, what's coming next. I don't think that's a final top. But at the same time, I don't think that's a final low either. Just a case of which way it's going to go up first. It wouldn't surprise me to see the market either hover here. It was a pretty strong resistance point there. We could have another day sitting there. That would be the 3rd of February. That could be the low. And if we then run up from there, well, it's pretty clearly going to be the 10th of February for a high there. 8th, 10th of February. The 10th is a Monday. The 8th is a Saturday. So it's more likely to be the Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of the following week there. Should we run up, the price I'm looking at is 6394. Which you can see here. I mentioned that last week. That is still good, maybe a fraction higher there. With all price forecasts, as you get closer and closer, the market does present you with more and more information to tighten that up. So it's very rare that I will sit on a price target and say, oh, it must do this, but know that weeks in advance. I'll have a rough idea all the time of where it's likely to head. And then as we get closer, I can fine tune that. You don't have to place your order until the day of or a day before the trade. So that price still looks pretty good to me, and I am watching that 10 Feb area, likely next week, and for a potential weekly high. Again, though, Monday and probably Tuesday's market action will give us a lot more clues there. And it's okay as a trader. I've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes I nail the market brilliantly, and you think, yep, that's really good. I've got this all sorted. Other times you're wrong, especially in sideways periods. It can get a little bit tricky there. Don't be down on yourself. Just say, okay, I was wrong. I haven't lost anything there. In fact, I made a small profit last week, even though I was wrong on my outlook for the week. It's just about having an opinion and then looking for trades around that opinion. And often they won't. If you're wrong, those trades won't come anyway. But if you do get one wrong, it's not the end of the world. Just shake it off. Get ready for the next setup. Now it's on to our Tunnel Through the Air training. If you are just a swing trader, form reader, you've got no interest in decoding Gann's work, I'll say goodbye to you. Thanks for watching and all the best. But I would encourage you to give Tunnel Through the Air a go. There is so much value in that book. Firstly, from a motivation point of view, but secondly, from a trading and analysis point of view, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I'm hoping that you're keeping up with your reading or your listening. Obviously, I've put the audio book up on the channel so you can listen to that. Let me know in the comments below where you're up to in your current read-through of Tunnel Through the Air. Yes, it will take you more than one read-through or more than one listen-through. Last week, we looked at numerology as a way into Tunnel Through the Air. This week, we'll just have a brief look at astrology. We'll begin to look at it, and I'm going to cover this over the next couple of weeks. So I use an astrology program called Solar Fire Gold, which I got from esotech.com. No, I'm not affiliated with them in any way. There's a free software that you can use. It's called Astrolog, which I believe does most of what Solar Fire Gold can do. I'm not sure if it does everything because I've never used it before, but if you don't want to fork out $450 for Solar Fire Gold, I know as traders, I've heard the expression tunnel through the air, tunnel through your wallet, because you're buying books and courses and software programs and all sorts of things over the years. I know it adds up. So if you do want to save a few $100, you can try Astrolog. It can do a lot of what you need to. I don't know if it can do everything. But you need to be able to cast charts, in particular natal charts. But a chart is just an image of where the planets are at a particular point in time, either from a geocentric perspective, which is from where we are standing on Earth, or from a heliocentric position, if you were standing on the sun and looking at where the planets are based on that position of standing on the sun. But a natal chart is a chart that's cast at the moment of a birth, and that could be a birth of a person. Maybe it's the birth of an invention of Robert Gordon's, or the birth of, or an event chart, for example. When an event happens, you look at the planets and what's going on there. And then you take that information and you compare it to what Gann is telling you in Tunnel Thru The Air. And you will notice some things. There's story elements where you think, well, is he telling a story, or is he actually telling me something that's happening in the chart? Now, there's a lot going on in Tunnel Thru The Air all the time. Don't expect the first thing that you find is going to be 100% right. Make sure you test it and look for confirmation in the book as well. But you need to be able to cast charts. You also need to be able to construct an ephemeris to do some of your planetary system testing, but we'll look at that in a future version of Aussie Dollar Insights. So I'm going to take you through Solar Fire Gold because it's the program I use and it's what I know. But basically, you need to be able to construct a natal chart. You can do it by hand. You can do it by astrology. You can do it by Solar Fire Gold. The books for learning astrology, if you've never done any astrology before, have a look on Gann's reading list. I did a video called Recommended Readings and Research for Gann Traders. I'll put a link in the description. You can have a look at that. But any of those astrology books should be okay. It'll teach you what a natal chart is, how to construct it. We're going to do it in Solar Fire Gold. And the example we're going to use here is Robert Gordon's birthday. So how do we find Robert Gordon's birthday? We go to Tunnel Thru The Air. Chapter 1, first paragraph, there it is, bang. He was born late Saturday night, June 9th, 1906. Now, for a natal chart, depending on the work that you're doing, you probably want a little bit more detail than just the day, because obviously, if you look at different items on the natal chart, like the ascendant, that's going to move 1 degree every 4 minutes. So you want to be really tight for that. If you're just looking at the sun moves roughly 1 degree per day, give or take. So that's not too big of a deal. You could just set the chart at midday. But Gann's telling us late Saturday night. So you would start in that area. And you can go into Solar Fire Gold, click on Chart at the top left and New. And you can bring up this data entry window and you can fill in the information. So I've got Robert Gordon up the top here. The 9th of June, 1906. I've used a date of 11:30. That's sort of late Saturday night without being midnight. He didn't say a few minutes before midnight. He said late Saturday night. So I would say probably somewhere after 10 o'clock, somewhere between 10 and 12. As an astrologer, as you get more advanced, there's a technique you can use called rectification of the natal chart. And you can look at all of the events of Robert Gordon, his life events and when stuff happens. And you can rectify the chart by running a series of tests and fine-tuning, moving the chart backwards and forwards a few minutes here and there to try and get the exact time of birth. That's not something I would recommend for most of you at this stage, unless you already know how to do that. That's not a simple process. I would just go with 11:30 or a little bit forward, a little bit back. You can do a place lookup. The place is important. Texarkana, Texas. And I've got that set as a male. Robert Gordon was a male, and coordinate system geocentric. Gann does have some examples of geocentric and some examples of heliocentric in Tunnel Thru The Air, so don't get locked into one or the other. So here it is, assuming 11:30 p.m., and we don't know that that's exact, but you'll see all of the planets and their positions in the houses and in the degree sign. So you have to get used to looking at these glyphs. They'll be slightly different across the astrology books, but you should be able to work out what they are. For example, you can see the Sun and Jupiter at 18 degrees Gemini, and Mercury very close by, and Pluto very close by as well. And then you can have a look at perhaps some of the angular relationships there. You've got Saturn not quite square, the Sun and Jupiter and these sorts of things. That's your angles there. This is very, very basic. There's a lot that you can do with it. I'm just giving you a head start, a way into it. And you would look up these charts. You might say, well, that's too many planets there. So you can right click, go to displayed points, and you can edit that. So you can click on edit, and you can go in and you can add selected points. So click on those selected points and take them off, or click on the unselected points and that will add them in to your chart there. Okay. You can also do the same thing for adding or removing the angles there for your aspects. The final thing I'll talk about there in the chart up the top there is that you can move the chart forward by a day at a time, or a month at a time, or even a second or a minute at a time. And if you want to really fine tune this, you can run this forwards and backwards by a few minutes, depending on your astrological skills. And you might be able to fine tune that to a little bit better than 11:30 p.m. and get an exact time there. But that's how you move through the chart up the top there. So that's a little bit of an introduction to astrology. Again, depending on who you talk to, people will say it's a 10, 20, or 30-year study. There's a lot in there. Focus on, pick a few astrology books from Gann's recommended reading list, and then focus on the recommended research books that I've given you in the previous video, and that should be a little bit of a clue for you as to the levels that you need to be at. All right, thank you for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed our second edition of Aussie Dollar Insights. If you've got an idea for a new segment, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear that or any other feedback. Otherwise, I will see you next week on Sunday, the 9th of February. I'm going to try and have these out at 7 p.m. every Sunday. So until then, have a fantastic week. All the best with your trading. Bye for now.